Macro artery stability versus small vessel damage. A 40-year look at my heart and stroke history. Number 1503, VPT Sharp 063, January 14, 2026. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Cardiovascular Disease. Preface: My stroke on June 21, 2025 did not happen suddenly or by accident. It was the final result of 36 years of living with type 2 diabetes. During the first 20 years, from 1990 to 2009, I depended almost entirely on diabetes medications. I did not seriously change how I ate, slept, exercised, or handled stress. Looking back at my long-term data, about 91% of the recent damage to my brain's tiny blood vessels happened during those years. That diabetes caused vascular calcification damage, slowly hardened and weakened the vessel walls. From 2010 to 2024, I changed my lifestyle completely. I controlled my food portions, reduced sugar and carbohydrates, walked long distances every day, regulated my sleep, and managed stress carefully. I took no medications at all, not even vitamins. During this later 16-year period, aging and leftover metabolic stress added only about 9% more damage on my recent stroke incident. I was never someone with constant high blood pressure. However, the immediate trigger of my stroke was a sudden blood pressure spike to 175 millimeters of mercury on June 21, 2025. That sudden surge caused bleeding in a very sensitive area of the brainstem. Bleeding in this area has a very high death rate, often estimated between 70 and 80%. After surviving my stroke, I carefully reviewed my entire history of life-threatening events. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 1985. Between 1994 and 2003, I suffered 5 heart attacks. During that period, I was the CEO of a Silicon Valley technology company, working under extreme pressure, long hours, and major legal conflicts involving hundreds of millions of dollars. Looking back, I believe my repeated heart attacks were caused by a dangerous combination of poorly controlled diabetes and extreme work stress. I was very lucky to survive them. In 2010, my health problems reached a breaking point. I was diagnosed with severe kidney damage. I developed nerve damage in my feet. That caused ulcers and almost led to toe amputation. I also developed serious eye damage that nearly caused blindness. When all of these problems appeared together, I finally understood that my body was failing as a system. That year of 2010 became my wake-up call. Starting in 2010, I committed to strict and disciplined lifestyle control. I reduced my food portions by about 80%. I cut sugar and carbohydrates by about 70%. I increased my daily walking from about 3,000 steps to 15,000 to 18,000 steps. I also enforced regular sleep, consistent daily routines, and stress control. From 2010 through 2024, I did not experience a single life-threatening event. That did not happen by chance. Something fundamental had changed. Based on this long personal journey, I am confident that disciplined lifestyle control, even without medications, played a decisive role in keeping me alive. Introduction. Between 1994 and 2003, I suffered 5 heart attacks. At that time, I had poorly controlled diabetes, and was leading a public technology company. My life was filled with long work hours, constant pressure, irregular sleep, and almost no attention to balance or recovery. Although I was taking diabetes drugs, I made almost no meaningful lifestyle changes during the first 20 years after my diagnosis. After leaving my executive role in 2002, and gradually moving toward a more structured and balanced life, the pattern changed completely. From 2004 through 2024, more than 20 years, I did not have a single heart attack or major large artery event. At first glance, this seems contradictory. This article explains why it is not. The key is understanding that large arteries and tiny blood vessels behave very differently, and that damage in one system does not always trigger events in the other at the same time. Large arteries and tiny blood vessels are different systems. One of the most important lessons from my research is that large arteries and tiny blood vessels fail in different ways. Large arteries, such as the coronary arteries of the heart, are thick, flexible pipes. They can change and adapt over time. Their main danger comes from unstable plaque that can suddenly rupture and block blood flow. These arteries are very sensitive to sudden blood pressure spikes, inflammation, and mechanical stress. Importantly, when overall stress is reduced, large arteries can regain functional stability even after years of accumulated damage. This indicates partial reversibility at the functional level. Despite largely irreversible structural injury, tiny blood vessels are very different. These include the small vessels in the kidneys, eyes, nerves, and brain. They have thin walls and very little backup capacity. Long exposure to high blood sugar slowly damages their structure. The vessel walls thicken, stiffen, and eventually harden. Once this kind of damage forms, it is largely permanent. It can slow down, but it rarely heals. This difference explains something very important. Heart attacks can stop, even while small vessel damage continues quietly in the background. How early diabetes damaged my small vessels. From 1990 to 2009, my diabetes was poorly controlled. I relied on diabetes medication but did not control diet, exercise, sleep, or daily stress. Over time, this created widespread damage to my small blood vessels. Years later, this damage showed up as kidney disease, nerve damage, eye damage, and other complications. By the time these problems appeared, the structural injury had already been done. In simple terms, those early years permanently weakened my body's smallest circulation system. That damage did not directly decide when a heart attack would happen, but it reduced my safety margin for the rest of my life. Why my heart attacks clustered between 1994 and 2003. The fact that my 5 heart attacks occurred during a specific decade of from 1994 to 2003 is not random. 3 forces came together. First, diabetes weakened the structure of my large arteries. Second, my role as a public company CEO created constant intense stress. This stress repeatedly pushed my blood pressure and heart workload to dangerous levels. Stress was not just emotional, it acted like repeated physical blows to already weakened vessels. Third, diabetes made the arteries fragile, while stress delivered sudden blood pressure surges that caused ruptures. Diabetes medication lowered my average blood sugar, but it did not control sharp sugar swings, blood pressure spikes, or stress-driven surges. The dangerous peaks remained. Why my heart attack stopped after 2004. After leaving my executive role in 2002, one major trigger disappeared. Extreme work stress was removed. My daily rhythm became more regular. Sleep improved. Sudden blood pressure surges became less frequent. Later, starting around 2010, strict lifestyle control reduced my stress even further. Food intake stabilized. Physical activity became consistent. Sleep and daily routines became predictable. These lifestyle changes did not repair the old damage. Instead, they lowered the stress level of the entire system. The forces that caused sudden rupture dropped below a critical threshold. As a result, my large arteries became stable. Heart attacks stopped, even though underlying damage still existed. Why a stroke still happened in 2025. Although my large arteries remained stable, the small vessels in my brain had been quietly damaged over 3.6 decades. Aging slowly reduced their flexibility. A single sudden blood pressure spike on June 21, 2025, was enough to exceed their tolerance and triggered a hemorrhagic stroke. This stroke incident does not contradict the success of my lifestyle control. It confirms it. Without those changes, the same event would likely have happened much earlier, and I probably would not have survived. Closing thought. This story is not about perfection or reversal. It is about understanding how the body fails over time. Large artery events are driven by sudden stress on weakened structures. Small vessel damage is driven by long-term exposure to high sugar and metabolic strain. Lifestyle control cannot erase the past, but it can dramatically reduce future risk. In my case, it likely bought me decades of life. I share this not as medical advice, but as lived experience, so others can recognize danger earlier and act before damage becomes irreversible. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only, and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article, and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.